The thing is, I wrote a series of books called The Dark Tower, and those books were all done. Basically, the 7 Dark Tower books are one long novel that never got edited because they were done either as short stories or they were done as limited editions from Donald Grant Press. Nobody edited them and nobody copy edited them. So I went back and I revised the first one, and I really need to go back to all of them. And one of the things in there that to me is a problem is my version of Sauron was the Crimson King, and you see this mark, the Eye of the King, all the time. That's outside evil, and in a way, outside evil is a more comforting concept than the idea that the devil made me do it is a way of shucking responsibility and saying that I'm not there. So I think that we all understand that evil is inside a lot of people, and yet at the same time, I think that what a lot of, and I'm not expressing this very well, but what a lot of horror fiction does and what a lot of fantastic fiction does is it allows us to grapple with the outside evil that strikes us.
Hey, Gary here. Welcome to Bookmob episode 46. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the long and epic novel by Stephen King, or series, the Dark Tower series, which is made up of 7 novels and 1 bridging novel, which basically makes it an 8-novel series. Anyway, let me just put these down and we can get on with the review. Okay, so where's my notes? All right. Now, the Dark Tower series is, like I said, 7 main novels, 1 bridging novel, which comes between novels 4 and 5, and that's the Wind Through the Keyhole. Yeah, so Wind Through the Keyhole is a bridging novel. I don't know if that term is used greatly in many other series, but I suppose in the way that Stephen King created this book series. I mean, he's been writing the series from between 1982 and 2004. And during that entire period, it wasn't like he was on target with each book. He would write it and then, he would put it away and then he would work on some of his other books. So there is like a disunity between these books as you read them, but you don't feel it that much. And one of the great things I like about the Dark Tower series is how King inserts himself into the story, not in some sort of academic metafiction sort of manner. It's more like he knew, because his fans. I mean, don't forget, since 1982, he's writing, he's making books, his books are turning into films, and this series, the Dark Tower series, has basically haunted him since the first one was released. So him inserting himself, what I think there's a term for it, self-insert, into the story is not some academic sort of metafiction idea of, the fourth wall is broken. I distinctly feel that he put himself into his own novel as a way to talk to his fans. Like, he's trying to get across the message that, look, I really like the story, I really want to finish the story, but I've got so many other stories inside me that I am going to have to put this ongoing series on a hiatus while I write my other stories. And apparently he received hundreds of letters, fan mail, people bothering him, make sure you finish the series. And I, for one, even though I've only recently started reading Stephen King, probably in the last, I don't know, 10 years, and only in the last year, in 2024, have I I've got my Stephen King reading marathon, which I'm up to now. I think I've got 2 or 3 books of his that I haven't read, but I've read most of his work. And then I had to come across the Dark Tower series. Now, the Dark Tower series is not something that I would be traditionally drawn to read, because I'm not a big fan of fantasy. To me, fantasy means, horses and knights and damsel in distress and dragons and orcs, and that's, to me, in my head, that's what fantasy is. I'm not saying that's what it is, but to me, I've always looked at science fiction, and I don't, in bookshops you go science fiction, fantasy. I wish they wouldn't do that. I really think science fiction has its own space in the lexicon, and I think fantasy has its own space as well. However, that's beside the point. So I always I was never inclined to read the Dark Tower series, and because I was doing my Stephen King reading marathon 2024, I thought, well, I've got to read it. So I picked up the first novel, The Gunslinger, and I must admit I was hooked immediately. And again, I do not think this is a fantasy series. I think this is more of a science fiction series than a fantasy series. I think it draws more from contemporary literature about time travel, about universal worlds, parallel worlds, strange creatures, great inventions. So when I got through the first novel, I was very keen to continue. The Drawing of the Three, which is the second novel in the series, is just really bizarre, and it's filled with really a lot of science fiction motifs, and the idea of portals and doors to other worlds really shines through in the second novel. And I don't think I would have not. I've only known this now because I decided to take a risk. And the term fantasy novel, which again I think is a misnomer when in reference to the Dark Tower series. Now I'm sure there's aficionados of fantasy who will say, yeah, well there you go, that's not fantasy. That's not fantasy. It's not just castles and dragons and orcs running around. Fantasy is this and that. But again, I think time travel, I think strange creatures, characters coming together and trying to break through to parallel worlds or alternative universes. To me, that is very, very, or it's reminiscent of science fiction literature. Anyway, I guess the most I can say is that it's a mixture of science fiction and fantasy. And again, you can argue on either side for 5,000 years and no one cares. It's what you think. I started reading the 8-book series 8th of August 2024, and I finished the last book, the Dark Tower, on the 19th of September 2024. So just over a month. However, between those most of those books, I did read a couple of other novels. So to be fair to the disciplined reader who wants to read the entire series, how I would encourage you to do from volume 1 to volume 7, including the bridging novel, I'm just saying to you that you can achieve this easily within 1 month, because not only is it a good, entertaining and enjoyable read, it's a gripping read, it's a page turner. The characters are wonderful. Stephen King's universe comes out in the novel. I mean, he uses characters from other stories that slip into these stories. So, I mean, really, it's America's. I always look at Stephen King as America's storyteller. He has been writing since the 1970s, that is, and he's still going strong. So, I think The Dark Tower is one of those series that has a very from what I've read on on the internet, looking at people, has a sort of hardcore following. Whereas my approach would be that this is approachable for many types of readers, that you don't need to be a hardcore fantasy or hardcore science fiction reader. You just need to want to find something that's enjoyable, entertaining, pleasurable to read, filled with ideas, and a really magnificent story. And it's an epic story that unfortunately for me, I saw the 2017 movie The Dark Tower when it came out, because I thought, I guess a movie's easier to digest because the timing is so short. And all that did was turn me away from reading the 8th novel, because even though it was impressive visually, it was quite clever, but it was very disjointed. And I can see why, because the novel is rich in character, rich in plot, and it really allows you to immerse yourself in Stephen King's magnificent universe that he has created. I mean, he has the most extraneous characters without legs, children, old people, morally sort of defunct characters, drug addicts, and he's getting a look at society, and he's making heroes out of nobodies and nobodies out of heroes. So I think that is one of the great, when you think about this novel, it's around 4,500 pages of literature, of text. So that's from 1982 to 2004. And I think that's got to be over, I'm just guessing here, I mean, it's got to be probably near to 1 million words, and that's just a guess. I'm sure someone out there knows exactly how many words, but I'm near to 1 million words put together in this great, epic, magnificent science fiction, fantasy story that I think can be read by a huge, diverse range of readers, young, old, readers who are looking for something to keep their reading busy, because they want to get engaged in something. They want to find a book that is going to make sure that they sit down and discipline their time and get through it. So seriously, tomorrow go out to the bookshop and buy Volume 1, The Gunslinger by Stephen King of the Dark Tower series, and read it. And I'm sure, and I'm pretty confident that you'll want to read some more, because the stories he created, and their stories all wrapped up in this one massive epic. Stephen King has tried to create not so much like a Lord of the Rings type world, because the Lord of the Rings is really precise, really stuck in on the English literature, and it's a great book, obviously well known, famous, but I think Stephen King's what's the word I'm looking for? Stephen King offers the reader a lighter and more accessible way to get into science fiction and fantasy. Now, the one thing I never liked about the Tolkien was all the songs and all that. And in The Dark Tower, there is periods of poetry that are, sort of, in a sense, move the plot along and does give you an idea about the characters and what's going on in the world that Stephen King has invented. And what is this world? Well, you're going to have to find out by... I can't give it away, because also when this final volume 7 was released, 2004, it created again, the worst thing about the internet is you can go on and find out everything. But what I'm saying is that the ending that Stephen King comes up with, and it's not just one page, I mean, the ending kind of drifts over a couple of hundred pages. It's a surprising ending, but it's a great ending. I really thought he played the idea of where are we going, because the whole point is the main character, the gunslinger, has this inherent drive to go to this tower, a physical structure that is holding up in his experience is holding up the entire universe, that over the years certain elements have got together and have started breaking the bridges to this Dark Tower in the hope that the universe will collapse. And when I mean universe, I mean the entire universe. So the character of the Gunslinger has been chosen, who knows by what, by biology, by gods, by, anyway, regardless, is that he is obsessed with, he doesn't know why, he needs to get to the tower. And throughout the books, you're always working towards the tower, and they are sidetracked into various adventures. And I guess at the end of the day, the book, Stephen King didn't really know where it was going. I mean, he didn't have a story in his head and go, this is what I'm going to do. He wrote the books. The books were popular. People liked the character of the Gunslinger. People could see this cowboy in a science fiction fantasy role. And you've got to remind yourself as you keep going, imagine Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood in the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for a few dollars more. That kind of, you've got to imagine that kind of character wandering, the deserts of a sort of Western apocalypse. Because the other thing that he does so well is that he gives you tidbits of history, that thousands of years have passed between eons and different types of societies that you will recognize because you live in one of those chosen societies right now. So the Gunslinger is weaving himself towards the tower, but he's weaving himself in and out of all these great societies where civilization has collapsed, where the remnants of good people have, in some senses, some good people have risen to try and re-establish civilized society, whereas at the same time, evil parts of society, robots, genetic misfunction, and what I'm saying is it's how brilliant Stephen King has taken all these popular culture, scientific ideas about time travel and genetic engineering, AI, and don't forget, this book is written from 1982 to 2004, so he's kind of way ahead of the game. If you want to come to sort of calling him someone who is able to see into the future, and his Gunslinger character is the loner, is the tortured man who is forced by some unknown sort of rationale to get to the tower. And when he gets to the tower, man, you read it and you go, wow, it feels so good. Like you go, man, I can see where he's coming from, and it's such a stinky, gratifying end because he does it so well, and it's such a surprise. And I mean, some of you will guess it before it becomes aired, depending on how in-depth your reading powers are. But even though I kind of had an idea until I read King's last sort of phase of the Dark Tower, I went, oh my, this is great. And it says so much about the human experience that sometimes we don't know what our motives are, what drives us. And I think Stephen King is looking, in the Dark Tower, he's looking at a mankind as a kind of ongoing, it's always collapsing and it's always creating, always collapsing, always creating. There's no reason to know why. You can't find out why. And the Gunslinger sort of exists in his world, in this strange place where he just knows that I have to get to this place regardless of the cost. And again, that is perfect storytelling, because even people, even good characters, even characters you love, even nice people who get in the way of the Gunslinger getting to the tower. If they got to go, they got to go. And he's made some hard decisions, and each and every single character is strong and fun to know and frustrating, and at the same time, like they're like a a gang. Like he has a whole series. I can't remember which book it was. Maybe Wolves of the Calla, which is a book 5. I think it's in book 5. He takes on this whole 7 samurai, or the Magnificent Seven, and he transports that into the universe where, you know, the local peasants are being being taken advantage of by the local sort of gangsters. And who are the gangsters? Well, you find out. And it's how the Magnificent Seven help these villages, this town, overcome some of their problems. And he does it so well that you can imagine. I must admit, I can't imagine why the entire series has not been created as an animation or even a live action series, because it is so visually powerful. It is so easily enjoyed. I mean, people would love to see this on the screen. Unfortunately, I mean, reading it, you gotta love it. It's a great read, and I think it's one of the issues I think Stephen King faced when he was making this, writing this book, is that it's a gorgeous story, and he literally could have kept the story going, but he knew, and again, his fans are quite ardent, you know, writing him letters. When are you going to finish this book? When is the ending? What happens at the Dark Tower? What is the Dark Tower? And I think he took a decision to finally finish it and put it to rest. He even involves his own really tragic. Well, he was run over by some crazy guy, drunk driver, early in the, I think it was, I don't know, 2000, I can't remember when, but he was nearly killed. Stephen King, the writer, and he interprets that and he writes that into the book. And it's really clever and it's really fun to read, because it is it's like the reader reaching out from the book and talking to you directly. And I think that's rare. And in my opinion, Stephen King is America's storyteller. And I think it's fun, even though you've got to put so much effort into reading these 8 books. But it's worth it. Because if you read them in the way that I think they were intended, is to fully immerse yourself in the story and the characters and keep it going, just keep at it, you kind of almost become one of the characters, because, well, you'll understand that more so because of the outcome of the actual story. The whole world is fiction. We're all created by someone or something. Writers create characters, so that gives you an idea of where some of the plot goes, about some characters who suddenly find themselves, hold on a minute, who am I? I've read this book and I'm in this book, but I'm a real person. So that's always something to think about. What else have we got here? I looked on the internet, and apparently there was talk of epic television series directed by someone called Mike Flanagan. He wants to create as I said before, it'd be wonderful to see a Dark Tower universe from Volume 1 to Volume 7. But I just don't think, it'd probably be too much money or whatever. There'd probably be too many problems. Because whenever someone wants to do something good, there's always going to be people coming up, hey, you can't have that, you can't do this, you can't do this, so whatever. So, anyway, for me, the book is there, the book is available. The novel in its whole, in its eight volumes, is right there, right now, and I think it's one of the great books that can help people see how lovely, how exciting, how creative the books can bring to you. So hopefully you will take the time to consider reading over 4,000 pages, nearly 1 million words, because it was worth it. It's fun. Great characters. There's so much to talk about. I'm sure when I finish this video, I go, oh, I should have said that. No, it doesn't matter, because individuals, when you read it, you will see and feel exactly what I was talking about. Pop culture references are just wonderful. Characters filled with crazy ideas, characters from other books and characters from other worlds. So it's a it's a great and fascinating cultural experience to go through Stephen King's The Dark Tower in 7 volumes with one book that is considered a bridging novel. A total of 8 novels that really do give you a sense of the epic scale of Stephen King's universe. So it was really wonderful to read, just over a month, and worth every page. Anyway, so that's that. Thanks for tuning in if you're still with me. And just at the moment, I'm just reading Julia by Sandra Newman, which is based on Julia is the character, the female character from George Orwell's novel 1984, and this is the novel that obviously takes Julia's perspective and all the scenes that had Winston Smith from the original novel and Julia from the original novel. Here, Newman has tried to create the same world, but from her perspective. It's I haven't finished it yet, but really good. I'm enjoying reading it, and it was kind of like a real break from the Stephen King madness universe and into the morbid banality of authoritarianism. All right, thanks for tuning in, and please feel free to like, subscribe, comment, contact me if you have any books that you want to see read or talked about. If you're a writer who wants someone to talk to, please feel free just to contact me, and maybe we can have a chat. All right, thanks a lot, and have a good week. Bye.